Welcome to WP Talks With, a podcast series dedicated to bringing you the latest and greatest in the media and marketing industry, sharing hot topics on the corporate agenda and business growth insights. Today on the show we have Ali Patterson, editor of Fintech Finance magazine. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's great to have you on today.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on today.
I just want to start by asking you about your business journey to owner of Fintech Finance. What inspired you to become the owner of this prominent fintech magazine?
I can actually pinpoint exactly kind of what one of the major influences was. I didn't even realize it until we were watching on a plane the Richard Branson documentary.
Yeah.
The HBO one. It's terrific. It's terrific. Doesn't come across as the nicest human in every capacity, but it's definitely an interesting documentary. But I remember reading his book. I must have been about 16 or so, and it definitely had a bit of an influence in my life. But I went to film school.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be the next Spielberg or Rodriguez or whoever. That's kind of what the goal was.
Yeah.
Fun fact: still haven't opened my degree certificate. So it's Schrodinger's degree certificate. I've either failed or I've got a 2-1 or a first. Don't know.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's a real shift from film making to fintech. But I guess in a way, there's a lot of transferable skills and things that you took from that.
Filmmaking's all about storytelling. Or the bit that I was interested in is certainly all about storytelling.
Yeah.
I had a really, really good manager, Sanjeev Dole, who taught me an awful lot about really about getting stuff done and about salesmanship. And I ended up basically selling advertising space on the magazine, and I was selling the advertising space and getting frustrated because I wasn't repeating any of the clients.
Yeah.
So I then was like, well, can you let me do this as a video instead of as just magazine? And Sanj, to his credit, was like, yeah, absolutely, go ahead. And so I then ended up applying my background in film to these interviews that were being sold for a magazine, and because there was nobody else there to do it, I flew out to Cape Town to interview a client that I'd booked over the phone. I brought all my kit with me. I didn't have any camera crew, and I set up cameras on on like a robot to move back and forth and record this interview whilst it was all doing it. So it was literally kind of I was a bit of a one-man band there for a lot of it. And then started bringing in some editors and stuff there, but I kind of became an accidental video journalist from off the back of this.
Well, they say that necessity is the mother of invention, and it very much sounds like it from your story there.
Absolutely. Like if I was on sales at Future Banking, and if I hadn't gone and done the video thing, I wouldn't have made any more sales because I wasn't repeating any clients there. I was on the video side of things.
Yeah.
Then I very a lot of different factors, but it all comes down to I very quickly realized that I was doing every part of the process for this, apart from the invoicing and collecting the money. And I was giving away 95% of it for someone to do that. So I was like, well, I should probably do this myself.
That's really interesting because I guess that shows how far the industry's gone as well in terms of content creation. Because back then, I imagine that videography was just sort of taking off. Video departments on their own wasn't really a thing. It was like you had someone who did video, whereas now everyone is doing video. You've got head of video,
hugely,
that sort of thing going on, and it's really transformed the industry and the approach that we take to it.
Back then, the only other outlet that was doing video was when Liz Lumley was at Finextra, and I would watch Liz's videos religiously and be like, okay, that's the baseline, that's the industry standard. How can I make these better?
Yeah.
So when we first started, it was literally myself, and my first hire was my brother-in-law Jordan, who you've probably all seen at events. He's which is now almost a cliche to sort of see at events. But I remember we went to the first big event that we went to was Cybos in Singapore 2015.
Yeah.
And we were there, got some little Fintech Finance t-shirts printed off. We were staying in the most horrific hostel. And like we didn't take taxis or anything, and we had like literally no money, but we got into Cybos and we just zoomed round all of Cybos, and we did something crazy, like 120 interviews, just me and Jordan in those 4 days. And I was there constantly thinking, this is gonna take off in the industry. Every media outlet's gonna be, so we have to start doing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
We actually wrote a song about Cybos. And I got everyone that we interviewed, I was like, oh, quick, sing this line back to me and give us a little dance. So yeah, it was, and we tried that with every single person, and 99% of the people gave us a little song and dance, and it's still on YouTube now.
Always been very, I guess, I won't say controversial, but looking to push things a bit. Looking to sort of come up with new and innovative ways to publish, different content, to get people interested in that content. I mean, you did I think a red hot chili pepper challenge, or I saw that recently. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Let's call a spade a spade. B2B media, if you look across, whether it be in medical, in finance, or law tech, or whatever, B2B media has an incredibly low bar of what people accept, and it really shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't. And because at the end of the day, people working for a business to business, that the key word there is people. They are actually human beings, and they want to be entertained. They want to be educated, but yeah, more else, they want to be engaged and entertained by their content.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, we were always looking, okay, what's working in the business consumer? What do you like to watch? What's kind of those kind of videos that go viral? So we literally just, and we had a nice email from their lawyers. We just did the same as Hot Ones, because those are some of the best interviews out there. So we did a similar thing and got people like, obviously, Nina Mahanti, David Breer, Megan Kaywood, and we brought them on and did an interview whilst again eating increasingly spicy spicy chicken wings or chicken nuggets.
Amazing.
I'm not the best at hot food, so that was kind of another factor as well. But that was great fun.
And I think that perhaps brings us on to, in terms of media and that relationship that we have with media, I think that this is something that you mentioned in our previous conversations about how perhaps the landscape shifting and changing with in relation to media buying and editorial and that whole integrated communications mix.
Every single piece of media, every single piece of news is paid for one way or another. The key is to basically accept that and focus on how many steps away you are from directly paying for it. What I find kind of interesting is getting the words on paper. Let's say every single outlet offered free coverage across the board. Fantastic, but getting the words on paper, that costs a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of resources to get those words done by the writer. You then have the sub-editor. You then have, if there's any graphics going in there as well, all of that is resources that could be used somewhere else. And that's just, if, for example, in an in-house press release going somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about building relationships, and it's about understanding relationships. It's also about understanding how business works. And I think sometimes certain agencies or certain brands, they take a very short-sighted view. They're like, how can we get as much pickup as possible in this very short amount of time, and that's all we need to do, and our job's done. But the job's never done, because you'll want to continue getting exposure, you want to continue building awareness, and you can only do that if you build a relationship. You need to build a long-term relationship with a company, with a media company.
90% of the time it does pay dividends in the long term. Yes, it will look good in the short term, getting that money in. Because we're privately owned, and because we are looking at that kind of long-term mentality, it then becomes about delivering long-term value to the client even if it means that we have a hit in the short term.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had customers that have worked with you, Ali, that really valued the service. You know, we started off with an interview, and then that led to taking out advertising for a couple of years, and taking out the virtual arenas. And I know that the virtual arenas that you run, really good in terms of ROI of generating leads and that sort of thing. And I think that's something that Fintech Finance really kicked off, especially in COVID, in the pandemic, when people had to become more creative in terms of how they produce their content.
I think actually the pandemic is kind of a perfect example of that. I think we were the first to deliver, I suppose, pandemic era products. I think it was within 4 days of the UK lockdown, we had recorded virtually and then got live our first video, and then it became, oh Christ, looking back at there's a point where we were doing this 4 days a week, going live with a different virtual arena.
Yeah.
God, that was a very weird time. But that's because, again, we can move quickly, and then you see several weeks and months later, different organizations doing the same thing. Now again, we've got to sort of slightly innovate again. So yeah, it's kind of nostalgic looking back at what we were doing at Cybos, and then if I'm looking forward to Cybos in Toronto this year, because the last one I went to, everywhere I looked, there was a camera person doing the kind of interviews that we used to do back in sort of 2015, and now we're doing interviews whilst we cut and style people's hair with a world-class hairstylist. You get a really different kind of interview from them. So yeah, we do have to keep pushing the creativity and pushing the gimmicks, but it's all got to be linked back and trying to tell a different story.
That's how you're getting people to reveal things that they shouldn't be in the hairdressing salon.
We've had so many times people come back and say, "Can you edit that bit out? I'm actually not supposed to say that." How are you finding, like, because I'm usually on the other side. So how do you kind of sort of prep people for interviews, or do you prep them, or does it depend on the person?
We prep for all interviews. We always want to really make it as authentic as possible, so the person comes across in the right way, and also hits their key messages. So what we're looking to communicate as part of that. And we also have former journalists on the team as well, so they can help with the prep process. But you might hear sometimes on Radio 4, they'll have like a speaker on there, a commentator, and perhaps they haven't quite rehearsed the delivery as well as they should do, and they'll be bridging back to their key messages, but it'll be at the wrong moment, or they won't be answering the question, and that's when it can get a bit messy. So that's the sort of thing that we work on with them. So we do training for broadcast, for any type of format really, just so it's not only to help them and help with the brand, but it's also to help make sure that the media gets what they want and what they're looking for out of it as well, because it has to be a two-way thing. So that's how we do it from our side.
I think rehearse over prep. Like the worst interviews we do are ones where people are just trying to remember what they wrote down on their cue cards.
Yeah.
But the best are where they've done it before, and that the actual kind of core of the interview, they actually know that if we throw in a few curveballs, they can actually absorb them and enhance the question further.
Absolutely. And it's really important to be authentic and to be truthful and to communicate in the right way. You need to avoid tokenization. You need to avoid having token people available who aren't the right people, but it's because you don't have anyone better. And I think that's completely inappropriate way to handle things. And you have to have your ducks set up in a row. You've got to look internally. You've got to make sure that we always say and do. You've got to be doing as well. As it's no good just saying. And that's also something I want to address as well in the industry from a PR point of view. Spinning things. There's no such a thing as spinning a story, because I've had a customer come to me and say, "Oh, how do we spin this?" And it's not about spinning it. It's about being authentic and communicating in a way that's as effective as possible and telling a really engaging story, but also being truthful and also having the proof points, having the stuff that's the evidence of what you're doing. And sometimes people have rethought business models based on that. I mean, we've almost acted as management consultants with some brands, because we're like, well, you can't really say this, but what you can say is this, or you need to change this as part of your organization. And so in a way, it becomes almost like a consulting approach to it.
I like that. I like that a lot as a PR agent, just becoming that kind of consultancy. I'm gonna use that in the future.
I think it's important to address the real key issues and like the challenges I think that we face as an industry, because then we can make things better. We can sort of improve things. I think you have a specific stance when it comes to awards.
I hate direct pay to play awards. We're about to do our third year of the FF Awards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been slightly different each year as to how we've been doing it. And when we first started, I looked at every possible business model, and it really actually it made me quite angry of how unclassy, for want of a better word, it was, because it's literally a case of you pay, you win. All right, okay. You've been, oh, then there's the model of you've been nominated as a finalist. Would you like to reserve a table? You'll only have to pay for it if you win. It's 30,000 for a table, and then lo and behold, those that pay for the table kind of sort of wins. I literally went through a kind of a big list of all the things that I don't like about awards. I spoke to a few marketing directors and CMOs about what they didn't like about awards, and I've just tried to kind of break that down.
Yeah.
First thing that I really think we've cracked it this year. We had made a few mistakes in previous years, such as we did table sales. This year, for the FF Award, there is absolutely no table sales. You cannot buy a seat. You cannot buy a table. There's no table sales.
Wow.
And that removes a huge amount of problems out of there. Last year, we did a few table sales, and people, partly because they've been conditioned by the very blatant pay-to-play side of things, they've been conditioned to that if you buy a table, you're expected to win, and people were upset that they didn't win because they brought a table. I was like, well, it's not like that.
I mean, it sounds like a very intelligent approach to awards, and you're really unpacking the whole proposition of awards and how you can make awards valuable to the industry.
Whenever I go to a business's headquarters and I see not just shoved to the back in the trophy cabinet, I see in pride of place. And again, we've only done it for 2 years, and this is our third year now. It really makes me happy seeing those trophies there. But yeah, 28th of November this year, we have. I'll do a little plug, because we still got entries closed at the end of September. If you want to attend, then first of all, try and be a finalist, because we're giving finalist tickets. Be a judge, we're giving judges tickets. See what's happening there. We actually get bankers and people putting forward their products into the same room, or message some of my team directly, because it's definitely not a pay to play. And we have Catherine Ryan is the host.
Fantastic.
For the evening.
It's also great dinner, great entertainment. From you invited me. You're very kind to invite me the other year, and really enjoyed it. It was fantastic. So I think it would be good to perhaps end on what would you say the hot trends are going to be as we're sort of going through to Q4 towards the end of the year and then into next year. Are you expecting anything sort of in the industry? What sort of things do you think are going to be hot for the next sort of few months and into next year?
Revolut to buy WeWork.
Interesting.
I'm calling it Revolut to buy WeWork. I'm also going to put out there Samsung to buy my beloved Curve. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the market, and there's going to be a lot of consolidation. There's going to be a lot less high fundraising of Series B, C, D, and on that. But I think there is going to be, probably towards the beginning part of next year, a lot of seed money floating around, and there's been a lot of redundancy payments recently. I think that has potentially been utilized, especially in financial services where the redundancy payments can be quite large. I think that those payments are going to be utilized in a lot of angel investing and and new exciting startups. The last financial crisis gave us the likes of Monzo, Starling, Revolut, etc. I think the economy we're in today, obviously, it's not the same as 2008. It's very different in many ways. But I think it's going to birth another generation of some quite cool, exciting products.
Ali, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Always a pleasure, Will.